On this episode of the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, we're going to talk about how we can get on the same page with some really critical folks, particularly parents and church leaders. Jared here from Sacred Playgrounds. We have a brand new resource in our Sacred Playgrounds camp store right now, focused on the 5 fundamentals of effective camps. This is a self-assessment tool that just launched. Stay tuned. Halfway through the episode, we'll let you know what your discount code is just for listening to the podcast.
Ever feel like you're carrying camp on your shoulders? Staff, parents, the budget, all while trying to keep the ministry central? This is Travis Allison from Go Camp Pro. Please visit camp.mba/sacred to take the free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic.
Welcome to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. We're behind the mic and behind the research, turning insights into impact and numbers into North Stars for camping ministries and the intrepid leaders that serve them. Each episode blends thoughtful theology, compelling data, and actionable wisdom, all to help camps thrive today, tomorrow, and for years to come. I'm your host and producer, Jared Rendell, Director of Innovation and Communication for Sacred Playgrounds. Joining me is Director and Lead Researcher, Jake Sorensen, a P.A.G.E. level scholar, experienced ministry practitioner, and the founder of Sacred Playground. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode, the support button to help make these episodes happen, and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Sacred Playgrounds, and always at sacredplaygrounds.com. Explore with us what God might have in store at your Sacred Playground. Hey, welcome to the Playground, listeners. Jared here. Jake's here. We're ready to chat. How are you, my friend?
Ready to chat. Doing great. Doing really great. Excited to be here. Excited to be talking about this fun topic and digging into some of the things that we've been finding from a bunch of different projects. It was fun kind of cataloging the different projects that we were working on that are directly related to this topic.
Yeah, that's true for sure. Yeah, this is an interesting time for us because we're still in the middle of like crunching data and analyzing data, both from summer particular things like effective camp projects, and then we've got, some of these other projects that are at different spots that we're in the midst of, that we've been connected with. We'll mention those in a second. And then it's also like we're getting ready to share a bunch of it, whether it's space like this or like Great Gathering is coming up in a couple weeks, and we've got workshops where we're talking about some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
And so we're in like still analyze and report and ask questions and make sense of it all mode, and we get to share some of it here pretty quick too. So lots of turning around of data and insights, and yeah.
That's for sure. For sure. Buried in the data. Trying to remember that it's all
stay loose.
It's all with real people and real places.
Tells real stories and
yeah. So really exciting to be able to talk through some of these things with individual camps that we're working with, but also the entire camp community.
All right, so one of the things that we just sent to all these camps that connected with us on Effective Camp Parent Insights, right? So some did that just Parent Insights, and some did the full project or whatever it might be. And so we've got all these insights from parents, these feedback from parents, and a bunch of that is this quantitative data, and we crunch lots of number, and we also get some thoughts and ideas from them that we share back with camps. And of course, we heard some things. So Jake, you have a couple of those to share.
Yeah, so what's super interesting is because of our initiatives focused on connecting churches and connecting parents with camp, we've asked a couple additional questions in these parent surveys, and that actually prompts interesting responses when we ask, how can the camp improve? Or what would you like to see more of? Or what are you most excited about from the camp experience? And so a couple of those responses. So remember that we do this with all sorts of different Christian camps. And so it's not just mainline or evangelical, it's a combination of all of these. And so this one really stuck out to me from a parent from a Catholic camp that we worked with this past summer. And the parent writes, one of my boys told us that his counselor in 2024, so the previous summer, read the Bible to them nightly. We then began to do that at home and did it for months. Then life got busy. We don't remember how we stopped, but we will restart that. What I love about this is the idea that this faith practice that they were doing at camp and that the counselor specifically was doing in the cabin with the boys, this carried into the home. And they started doing it as a family because of the catalyst that camp was. And then the parent says, and then we kind of fell off a little bit after a few months. But we don't even remember how we stopped. But now we were reminded again from the camp experience about this, and we want to restart it. I thought that was super interesting and super profound. One more from a Lutheran camp that we worked with. The parent writes, for her first time, it was out of her box and something she is not used to. However, she did enjoy her time and had fun and was able to take a step into faith, something we don't normally do. This is a non-church going family. We will be attending church services back home and diving more into that. So camp as a catalyst for a family that was only marginally involved or not involved in church, and now as a result of the camp experience is interested in pursuing faith in the church. Super interesting. So you got connections with camp and parents, and camp in the home with Bible reading with the one family, and this other family connecting them with the church. So really two interesting stories there that are just captured in those individual comments. Would love to share more as we go through the episode too.
So you said a few things, Jake, that speak to the heart of what we're talking about. The connection with these four of the projects that we have had a hand in some way or the other. They all have a heart for what you just said. They
Absolutely.
all have a heart for connecting these three sacred spaces. We've got this sacred camp space. The name is Sacred Playgrounds on purpose. And we've got these sacred church spaces. And we know that faith formation happens at home. And that makes it a sacred space, right? So we've got these three sacred spaces. And the connectivity in these spaces really matters. It was the whole heart behind, you use that word catalyst, right? Which is something that also came up in Rhythms of Faith, right? So we were part of this Rhythms of Faith project. And the subtitle of that whole thing was Camp as a Catalyst for the practices that you were talking about. Camp is a catalyst for faith formation in the home and connected with the church. So that was one of these four, right? Is Rhythms of Faith.
Yep. And the other ones were the Engaging Children Initiative, which is a project in the La Crosse Area Synod of the ELCA in Western Wisconsin. The Go Tell It in the Mountains, initiative in Western Appalachia in Pennsylvania. And so that's a combination of a bunch of Lutheran churches and synods and camps working together on that one. And then the Bridge program. And this is a specific one at a specific camp. And so that's Luther Ridge and Luther Rock in North Carolina. And trying to partner with specific churches and using camp as that bridge and trying to bridge camp to home. And so super interesting project there. So some of them are super specific and some of them are regional. And of course, Rhythms of Faith is a nationwide multi-denominational study. And so, or was. And so super exciting findings from all of these projects. And, why are we focusing so much on this? I really think this is one of the cutting edges of camp. And one of the things that we need to rethink, retool, refocus our paradigm of what camp is and what camp does. I think too often people think of it as a set apart, set alone experience, as an island out there. And so how are we bridging that distance between camp and home? How are we helping camps see themselves as training centers, not just somewhere where people are sent, but places where we're actually equipping, empowering, and then sending people out into the world to impact their homes, to impact their churches, and to impact the church capital C as well. The camps really can have, and they're poised to have, an outsized impact on the church in the 21st century.
That's important right there, right? That camps are poised to have an outsized impact on churches and homes right now.
Yes, absolutely. They've been set up for this. Camps used to be just a space that you went. right? It's a space that we went for additional discipleship, and it was a supplemental thing. It was a parachurch organization for a long, long time, and camps have now come into a new space and a new reality. In a lot of cases, where they can be the entry point, and they are oftentimes the entry point, as we heard from that Lutheran parent, that we're not really engaged with church. My kid hasn't really been interested in faith before, and now my kid is showing an interest, and we're going to start engaging in church. That is
Yeah.
a very important perspective, and it's not an isolated thing. We heard this again and again in our parent surveys, but also when we go from camp to camp and we do these focus groups and we do these interviews, we're hearing this from parents, we're hearing this from campers, we're hearing this from church leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a time of great excitement, I think, for camps as we re-envision, what camp is and what
Mm-hmm.
camp does, and how camp operates in this world, and specifically in partnership with families and with congregations.
Amen. So here's the idea, everybody. We have listened, and we continue to listen through these projects and through the parent comments and things like that. And so what we did is we put this together and gave us a way to think about that. And because to start this, we got to get on the same page. And so we're going to use that P.A.G.E. That's how we spell page. We're going to use some acronym there to just help frame it for us. And so those 4 letters will correspond to words that we're going to talk through. And they sort of set up kind of some phases and ways of thinking about going about this, going after this. And so we'll lay those out. We'll lay those 4 phases out here in a second. Before we do that, we're going to answer our quick camp question.
Quick camp question.
Jake, our quick camp question for the day is this, and it's connected to this audience, this parent audience in particular that we're talking about. So this question came from our Pulse Check survey this last summer. We gathered some great questions in there. We got a slate of them we get to talk through. And so here's the question this week. How do we respond to and build the trust of this anxious generation, particularly the parents? How do we respond to and build trust of this anxious generation, particularly the parents, right? So clearly there's a call out, this anxious generation word call out.
Right.
So
call out to
how do we
Jonathan
respond to
Haidt's
that?
book, Anxious Generation.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So, wow, it's a big question, right? So thanks for throwing us such a softball here. My goodness. We could go through, we should do a whole
big
episode on this, really. But
We sure could.
a couple things. So the question specifically asks, how do we build trust? Specifically looking at the parents. Couple things. One, parents are more connected to their kids than ever, and there are a lot of good things to this, right? And so parents want to be involved. I was just having a conversation with a colleague about this, and we were kind of debating almost that, like, remember the latchkey generation, and the kids had to figure things out, and they were empowered and things like that. But this is a different sort of a generation and a different sort of way of being parents, where parents are more involved. And the critique that Jonathan Haidt has in The Anxious Generation is that parents are actually overprotecting their kids in the real world. And so we're actually overprotecting them. We need to, as my colleague was arguing with me, say, give them a little more space. Let them succeed. Let them fail without the parents swooping in there right away. And so a camp is a space that can do that, right? But also the flip side of that Jonathan Haidt talks about in The Anxious Generation. So we're overprotecting them in the real world, but we're underprotecting them in the virtual world. So they have these virtual spaces where we're not providing enough supervision for them, and they're really encountering a lot of the dangers that we perceive are happening in the real world. And so how do we engage with them? How do we build their trust? One, we communicate really, really effectively. You cannot over communicate with this cohort of parents of the anxious generation. Give them the information and give it to them again and again and again, and engage them in different ways. Talk to them. They need to be over communicated with. And don't roll your eyes at that. Right? Say, this is how we're doing it, and this is why. This is why camp matters. They know that their kids are spending too much time online. They want them to make friends. They want them to have fun. They want them to be active. Lean into those things, because camp does these things so well. I mean, when when I first heard this question, I said, "Oh, it's kind of a softball." I mean, like I was joking a little bit, but I'm also like, it is a bit because it's so obvious what we do really well. Um, we just need to communicate it with the parents because we have exactly what they're looking for. Now, they need to know that their kid is going to be safe. So communicate how you're keeping them safe. Communicate during the week that you're keeping them safe. All of those sorts of things. That's how you build trust. You over communicate with them, and you communicate about
Mhm.
what camp is and what camp
Mhm.
does and why camp does it. Lean into the absence from technology because that's one of the keys of the anxious generation. That parents know that they need to limit their child's technology use, but they're trying to figure out the balance and how to do that. Tell them that this is a space where their kids will be free from technology. And that doesn't mean you as a parent are going to be free from technology because what we're going to do, your kid's not going to have the cell phone to text you all the time, but we are going to let you know how they're doing. And we're going to give updates and we're going to give pictures and things like this to help them understand that they don't need that constant attention of their kids. They don't need to be there all the time. They don't need to swipe problems out of their way, that this is healthy for them and for their kid. These are all things that they want. So communicate the why beforehand, communicate during, and then do some follow up as well.
Amen. Thanks, Jake. All right. Well, that was thick already. Let's talk some more about these. Let's talk some more about these parents. So, like I said, we've got a bit of an acronym to help us think about this to get on the same page. And so we'll kind of lift up one of these phases with some holes in the middle because there's some crossover and things that happen along the way, and we'll share some more, some quotes and data and what we've learned along the way. So we got to get started. We're going to start with P. P is for prepare.
Yes.
P is for prepare.
So prepare, this is such a key phase of the camp experience, but it's also something that we need to make sure that we are doing in general, right? So it's got a couple meanings here, but when we think about camp, usually we think about the experience itself and wanting it to be a quality experience, wanting the kids to have fun, be safe, all those things. And that's so important. When we usually add things onto that, it's usually onto the tail end of it. We're going to, do some follow-up. But we don't want to ignore, and we can't ignore, the phase that comes before the experience itself. And that's the prepare phase. How are we preparing campers, parents, church leaders, staff
Comes up
for
there
the
too,
camp
but
experience? And so one of the things that really became clear in the Rhythms of Faith project, and it was one of the big findings from the site visits that we did, through Rhythms of Faith, was that these audiences, all the audiences are important, right? Campers, parents, church leaders, staff, all these audiences are important, but there's 3 phases to the experience. There's the before, there's the during, and the after, and you need to attend to the communication and the engagement with these audiences in all 3 phases, before, during, and after. So what are you doing to engage parents before they send their kids to camp? And it's got to be more than just the packing list, right? How are you helping them understand what they're going to get out of the experience, what they should expect from the experience, all of those different pieces. Same with church leaders. How are you preparing them? And so there's just some really cool ideas that are out there for how to do this. Certainly use the virtual tools and offer a pre-camp gathering at camp where they can see the space, things like that, but also really communicate ahead of time what they're going to experience and what they can expect. And then there'll be fewer surprises. You'll get fewer phone calls about why is this not happening? Why am I not hearing this? And things like that, because you've been doing a little preparation for them as well. But it gives them a chance to engage with some of the faith practices before camp. So if we want to impact faith formation in the home, are we sending them resources beforehand?
Yeah.
Are we helping them, prepare for what they should expect?
Set the table for their experience.
Set the table for their experience, absolutely. And one of the key spaces to do this is the church. And so not all of our campers are engaged in church, but some of them are, and we can really help equip the churches to do some preparation for the camp experience. And one of those key things to do is a commissioning service. So are we equipping our church leaders with materials to do a commissioning service for the campers that are going to camp this summer? We do that with mission trips and service trips. Why aren't we doing it for camp? Some churches are, right? But some of the churches are doing it on their own. Do they have resources from you so that they can do something related to the theme of the camp, of the Bible study and things like that? Do they have camp songs that they can use or camp graces? I mean, are you
Mhm.
equipping them so that the experience is framed beginning, during, and end in partnership with the parents
Mhm.
and in partnership with the church leaders? And so preparing is the P for this. Such an
Two
important piece
things
of
to
this
add on.
experience. Yeah, please.
Yeah, big time. We gathered some camp leaders. This was just last week, and some of them are doing monthly. They're doing monthly Zoom gatherings with any parent who's signed up. They give a chance to get face to face. It is when you can have somebody that they see your face, and when they get to registration, if they've seen that face already before, it's a big difference. All right. We do, by the way, if a commissioning service is helpful, we've got a free template for you, so you can just send us a message, and we'll give you that template free. Yeah, just send us a note.
Awesome.
So there's the P. We're going to prepare. Next, we're going to align. A is for align. I feel like I'm doing my own Sacred Playground Sesame Street episode here as I intro these words. A is for align.
Aligning, what we're doing is we're aligning our priorities. And what we need to remember here is that this is a paradigm shift for some of us and some of our camps. And so as we were diving into these projects and asking these questions about follow-up, about partnership, about equipping parents, there was the question that was asked, and it keeps getting asked among parents, among church leaders: is this camp's role? Is it camp's role to meddle in the home? Is it camp's role to, try to help churches do this? Or is camp just a place that we send people to have fun? And so this is where there's a bit of a paradigm shift for us to reimagine camp as this training center,
Yeah.
as this training hub. And it starts with our own imagining and aligning our values and our statements to reflect this. Who do we understand ourselves to be? Proclaiming this and saying, this is what we are now going to do. We are now going to work to impact faith in the home. We are going to work to impact the vibrancy of congregations. That is something that is part of our mission. We're not just going to be this set apart space where people can come and have a good time and practice their faith as they see fit. We're actually going to try to be a catalyst. Now, what does that mean when we align those values? What does that mean when we get everybody on the same page and help them understand this is what we're trying to do? Think about your summer staff members. If we can get them on that same page, if we can help them understand that part of what they're trying to do is impact the home, how does that change the way that they do evening devotions, or they do Bible study, or they engage in conversations? We should always be asking those questions. If this is our priority, what now shall we do? And so that's what I mean when I say align. We need to align our leaders and our partners to understand this is what we're trying to do. And our communications should reflect that. So when we're doing the preparation work, when we're preparing the parents, we're preparing the church leaders, we're preparing the staff, preparing the campers, we have an eye to this goal of impacting faith beyond camp. It's not just to help them have a great experience here. It's to impact beyond. So if we're trying to do that, what does that mean for how we engage people at camp? And so for some camps, this means we're actually going to build cabins or housing units so that church leaders can come and stay while their kids are here at camp, because we want them to be part of this experience. And when they're here, our staff are going to understand that they're not here meddling in the experience or tainting the experience or taking the glory away from them. It's not about the camp counselor getting glory. It's about pointing to these other folks as partners and lifting up the parent, lifting up the church leader, lifting up the youth minister as somebody who the camper can turn to with questions and to have conversations. So how can we help them learn that at camp and equip them then to continue these conversations, continue these faith practices in the home, like we heard from a couple of those parents in our opening, when we heard from those parents that were interested now in going to church, or now we're going to continue doing Bible study at home, just like they were doing at camp. What if our goal was that? We want to impact that. We want our young people and their families to pray around the dinner table after camp. We want them to engage with a local congregation, a local church more frequently. We want them to have devotions in the home. Like that's what we're trying to impact. How then does that change our goals and experiences and our programming at camp?
My church does prayer partners with our youth in confirmation, right? And so it's great. Right? We use these prayer wristbands to connect, to connect an adult in the congregation and one of these youth. And this year, the thing that they added on, like last year we just passed wristbands, right? I wore this wristband. And the thing that they added on this year was an all about me sheet that both the youth and the prayer partner fill out, and they facilitate that exchange. The thing that was intriguing to me about it is the difference that it makes, and this is with campers, and this is with parents, and this is definitely with staff, the difference it makes when you know where someone's coming from. It's been part of what's been so powerful about the parent surveys overall, is because we get this idea about where these people are coming from, and that allows us to know what they care about, to know, like, gosh, how great would a sheet like that be? Yes, of course we need the medical information, but tell me actually about your camper, and here you go, counselor. Like here's your packet from their church youth worker about the experience that they had with them. Here's your all about me from this parent that actually says, here's what's going on in their world. Here's the stuff that they care about. Here's the thing that our family is or wants to work on. Here's our hope after camp. Things like that, right? If you were capturing that kind of stuff, oh my gosh, that would be gold. Of course, we need this camper sheet, but if that was part of our prep meeting for our counselors during the summer, that idea of being aligned to their priorities, their goals, their hopes, their dreams, where they're coming from would make a massive difference in how we would build things and the conversations we would have and our thoughts about what's coming after.
What's cool about this, Jared, is that example that you shared is awesome. We have a ton of those examples from all of these different projects that we've been participating in because they're so contextual, right? Each camp has a different context. They have a different clientele. They're going to do things a little differently. And the practice that makes sense at one camp might not make sense at another camp. But if we can start with these understandings of aligning these values and aligning these priorities, then they start getting creative. And when they meet together and say, what would be helpful for our parents? What would be helpful for our church leaders? What are some of the practices that we could really lean into at our camp that could then have an impact on faith in the home and on church engagement? And so the creativity is really incredible. So it's not like do this, this, and this, and then everything will be all well. It's align your priorities and have these conversations. And then the things that you come up with are going to be much more amazing than the things that we could just say, just plug and play this thing.
And impactful.
We'll give you some of those examples, of course, but always contextualize. And so it really begins with aligning, right? Aligning our values.
Jared back with you from Sacred Playgrounds. Let me tell you something that you already know. Camp has the potential to be deeply impactful. Many of us have seen it with our own eyes and felt it with our own souls, having had our own transformative, maybe even life-changing experiences. And yet we know that camp doesn't always have the same impact on everyone. So what is it that makes camp work? That's what we set to uncover. And over the last decade of research, with thousands of campers and parents that we've heard from since, the 5 fundamentals of Christian summer camp continue to apply. These 5 foundational ways of being camp, when in place, missional outcomes are consistent and lasting. We just launched a brand new self-assessment tool designed to help camp leaders like you start thinking more deeply about these 5 fundamentals of Christian summer camp in your own specific context. Here's what you get in this tool. It consists of an introduction to the 5 fundamentals and then a 10-question self-scored assessment for each one of these 5. Finally, a guided worksheet that will help you record, analyze, and implement what you learn. It can be done individually and will be especially impactful when done in the context of your camp staff team. This self-assessment tool is available right now on our camp store for instant download. You can find it at sacredplaygrounds.com/store. Just click 5 Fundamental Self-Assessment and then add to cart. When you get to checkout, just for listening to this podcast, add the discount code PODCAST and we'll take 30% off of that order. We'd love to hear what you learn, what you uncover as you start to explore your own context and where these 5 fundamentals are alive and well and matter for you at your camp, at your sacred playground.
Last summer, I watched a canoe tip at a camp waterfront. The staff knew exactly what to do. Flip the canoe, steady it, climb back in, begin to bail. That's what resilience looks like in our world. But for many camp directors, it feels like we're treading water. Staffing, parents, finances, board meetings, without a plan to flip that canoe. That's why we created the Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic. It helps you see where the leaks are and where your team already has strength, so you can keep ministry at the center without drowning in overwhelm. I'm Travis from Go Camp Pro. You might remember me from being a guest here on Sacred Playgrounds last year. I've walked these paths and I know the strain. Take the free diagnostic at camp.mba/sacred. Again, that's camp.mba/sacred.
So that's the A.
Yeah.
So
It
we
makes a
got
big difference.
prepare, align, and then our G. What's their G, Jared?
G is for gather. G
Gather.
is for gather.
So in-person matters. One of the things that people are looking for is, what do we now do in this virtual world? How do we effectively use virtual resources? It's a really good question. Right now during the AI revolution, people are saying, how can we effectively use AI? Because there are effective ways to use it, and then there are ways that are going to be not helpful at all, right? That are actually going to be hurtful if we rely on AI rather than a human being to do those things. And there's actually studies that show using these things can affect our brains and how we think and all those different things. And so it's like the virtual spaces can be important, but remember, virtual always supplements the physical. Always. It always supplements the in-person. It never takes the place of it. And the great thing about camp is that it's designed around these in-person participatory kinesthetic experiences. That's what camp is. And that's one of the reasons that we need camps more than ever, and that camps are, again, poised to be such a ministry and thought leader in the 21st century, because these spaces are needed even more now that more things are moving online. And so one of the things that we really been asking parents, church leaders, and participants in all these different surveys. So, but especially the Go Tell It in the Mountain survey and the Engaging Children initiative, what are some of the things that
big
really
questions
impact
there.
your faith, or what can we do more of? What would be valuable for you and your family? And the response overwhelmingly is in person. We want in-person stuff. And it's so interesting because it's like in some of these we're like, no, really, we could do an app. We have some money from a grant and we would love to develop an app. And people are like, yeah, we might use it, but we probably won't. That's not going to be as valuable or as effective as in person. These are the things that we're craving and that we want. These are the things that one have impacted our faith the most. And so when we ask them, what has impacted your faith, the in-person things are far and away the highest. And that's small groups, and it's in-person worship, and it's things like communion, right? The very tactile experience of Holy Communion. And the things that are at the bottom are the virtual things. And then when we say, what do you want more of? Again, the things at the bottom are the virtual things. And so it's not like they're unimportant or we shouldn't do them at all. It's that we shouldn't think of them as replacements. They're only supplemental. And so one of the great things, and I think maybe the best thing that we did with the Rhythms of Faith project, was we engaged these camps in the project, and we were able to provide a training event at each of these 9 camps that was participating. And we gathered together at the camp, not virtually. We did this very intentionally. And it was an overnight retreat, and it was church leaders, partner church leaders that were engaged with the camp. They were camp enthusiasts, and they wanted to participate in this conversation about how can we influence faith in the home. And so the alignment of values was happening in person in this gathering. And I got to go to 4 of these out of the 9 that we did, and it was incredible to see the goodwill that they created about just being asked. We want to partner with you to influence the faith of your families in your congregations. And we want to equip you. What are the ways that we can better partner together? And so just by gathering and by getting on the same page, there were new ideas generated. And so one of the camps, Cross Trails down in Texas, people were coming from 5 or 6 hours away and driving for this overnight retreat. They cared about it this much, right? And they became engaged in this process. And one of the things that they really leaned into was the idea of the commissioning service. And so we're all of our churches are now going to do this commissioning service. And what do we need from the camp? Well, we need some resources. And so camp started developing a commissioning service template and some resources that they could use in their churches to help prepare them for the summer. So that it wasn't just the church doing this on their own, but they had the resources from the camp. And then they wrapped it with, on the back end of the camp experience, in August or September, each of the churches said, we're going to do a celebration for all of those that went to camp. We're going to gather again at church. And we're going to celebrate. We're going to hear some stories. We're going to get some testimonies. And we're going to sing some camp songs that they sang at camp during the summer. And so they wrap the experience at the front end and at the back end, right? So there's preparation, but there's also follow-up, right? Remember the before, during, and after of the experience. And those were simple interventions. And they said, we're all going to do this. And we're going to share ideas and resources. At these retreats, so many other cool things came up. There was the idea of mementos that came from one of the retreats. Actually, 2 different retreats came up with this idea of mementos. Not that we're coming home from camp, because I love that idea, right? But that we're going from the church to camp. And so the church was actually providing the campers with a memento that the church provided that the campers would then take with them to camp. And one of them that I love that I'll share as a great example, pillowcases. So they commissioned the campers, they gave them each a pillowcase that they would then take to camp, and it was decorated. Some of them were signed, or they had images from the church on there. So it was, they're laying their head on the encouragement and the love of their home congregation. It's something, and it gives them comfort at night. Another one, instead of pillowcases, they used stuffed animals, and so they gave stuffies to all the campers, and that was something that they could take with them and hold. Again, it's at night, right, in the cabin, and it's something every day that can remind them of their home congregation. And so these are just a couple examples, but now you all can get creative and say, how can we now use these things in our context so that we can equip and so that we can tie these things together? And it was the in-person gathering that generated these ideas. Let me give you another example. This is from our bridge program at Luther Ridge, Luther Rock. And so they're working with some different congregations. They're doing this very intentionally. They have this whole program where they're trying to engage kids at camp and families at camp. They're doing an in-person retreat. And then at the congregations are then gathering at least monthly with these families, and they're doing an event at the church. And it's around this program. So they started at the retreat, and then they continue it during the entire year, and that's leading back into camp. And one of the things that they really thought that was going to be great, they started an app. And the app was based on cabin devotions that happened at camp. And they were really excited about this. And we asked people in the middle and at the end of the program, what did they find the most value in, and how many used the app? And some of them used the app, right? The app served as a connection point for some of them, but it was a minority of the families. The vast majority of them said the most valuable thing was these in-person gatherings, getting together with my church family and being reminded of these practices, and then we would go home and do them. Some of them used the app as the resource, but a lot of them didn't.
Right.
And so that's what I mean by the virtual is always supplemental to the in-person and to the physical. And so we need those in-person gatherings to really supplement these things. And so can your church do that? Can you continue to gather? So rather than just say, okay, we're going to do a celebration at the end of camp, what if we kept gathering? And we used camp as a catalyst for continuing these gatherings of young people, of families, and had that then as also the preparation for going to camp. And then it's this feedback loop. And that's what we're really looking for, is a feedback loop, right? Where camp can be a catalyst and a supplement, but what it's feeding back into is these permanent systems of the home and of the local church.
So we prepare, we align, we gather. E is for equip. And you actually said this word, a couple times already because it leads right out of that, right? E is for equip.
Equip. And so it's not just follow-up, right? Equipping at every stage of this is really important. So we can equip our parents while their kids are at camp, right? So it's not just follow-up, but a lot of it is follow-up. How can we equip them to continue the positive impacts of camp in the home and the church? And so equipping the church leaders with some of these resources for commissioning services and songs and things that they can do at church that reflect the priorities of camp. How can we equip parents for conversations, both on the way home, but also after they get back home? Is there something that can help them continue something like that Catholic family was talking about, the Bible studies as a family post-camp? Because that's what we're after. We're after those things. We're after those conversations between parent and child, because, again, we'll repeat this again and again, studies make clear that conversations between parent and child about God and faith, the single most important factor for faith continuing into the emerging adult years. Is this important or not? Is this something that I want to keep learning about, want to give my life for?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that was important in your home with the most important people in your life? Were you having faith conversations with parents, with other adult mentors, with siblings, with cousins, those sorts of things? And so camp is an effective training ground for these faith conversations. We've really learned that from the research at camp. It's one of the most consistent things that we see from camp. From all these different studies, how is camp impacting you? The number one area that families talk about and refer to is initiating faith conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can,
that was one of the best findings
for those things,
right?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the biggest findings, and
we know this thing works, and it's the thing that seems to be working, which seems a little obvious. But I was so excited to start to see some of that in bits of all these different studies. Like, we know this makes it happen. Great, this is the thing we're seeing the increases in.
Yeah, like camp does this really, really well. We can try to impact some of these other things, and we absolutely should. The thing that camp does most consistently in terms of influence is influencing these faith conversations in the home. And so how can we now dial that up? Because the parents are looking for it. I promise you, I give you a couple more parent quotes. Here's from a Presbyterian parent from our Presbyterian study this summer. "Let me know what my child learned about being a Christian," this parent said. "We would like to continue to go to church or on an online worship session." Right? So we want to continue doing this. Can you let me know what my child learned? So you talked about, Jared, equipping the counselors with what the parents are hoping the kid will learn or what the camper is hoping to learn at camp. Let's do that on the back end as well. And let's equip the parents and the church leaders with what the counselor saw in the camper that week. What did you see? How can you send them home with, "I saw this area of growth in your camper this week," or I really appreciated this value that I saw in your camper, and here's how you can continue that in the home. It takes a little extra work, and it can be so impactful as a take-home thing. And I talked about mementos.
Relational.
Use mementos. Use something that they can physically take home. The thing that I hear about so frequently in terms of like impacts and carryovers and physical things are these affirmation sheets that campers get at camp, where other campers or their counselor gives them affirmations, specific affirmations. "This is what I see in you." And campers will hang those on their mirror at home. So they see a reflection that oftentimes they don't like or they wish was different. And then they see the reflection from the people that they know and love and trust from camp. "You are beautiful. You are beloved. You're funny. You're a child of God. I appreciate that you're so helpful. You're kind." Like all of these different things, these qualities that that their friends, their trusted counselors saw in them at camp. That's a memento that can be taken home. Give those to parents as well. What did we see in your kid? Where can we have that conversation, continue that conversation? And so conversation starters, absolutely. If you're doing nothing else with this, at least equip parents for the ride home to have conversations with their camper. Also equip them with devotional tools. One of the great things, this was at Shatek, another one of the camps that visited as a part of the Rhythms of Faith project. The idea that came out of that in-person gathering where they're trying to align their values and everything was to do a devotion and to do it together. And so those church leaders were the ones that wrote daily devotions. And so the campers got to take these things home, and they were family devotions written by partner church leaders to influence faith in the home as a carryover from the camp experience. Wow, that's checking all these boxes, right? It's engaging the church leaders, it's engaging the campers and their families, it's trying to continue those things back in the home. And so I love this idea of like, we're doing these devotions and these Bible studies at camp. Now, can we equip you at least for a little while, at least for a couple of weeks post camp, to get that rhythm going in the home? And can we empower our church leaders to help us with that? Wow, what a great partnership thing. That's checking all the boxes right there. One more quote from a parent. This was from one of our covenant camps, evangelical covenant camps. The parent writes, "It would be great to have a summary at the end of the week with the main teaching points and Bible verses to continue to reinforce them at home." Again, we heard this again and again from parents at all different camps. We would love to be equipped. We are very open to this. Can you please give us these resources? Are they going to be used by everybody? No, absolutely not. Some of the parents are going to throw them in the garbage on the way out. And what if 10%? What if 20%? What if 50% went home and used these things? And what if you did this year after year so that the kids who came year after year and the families that came year after year come to expect it and anticipate it and look forward to it, so that they take that home and they say, great, I know now that I'm going to have these 4 weeks where I can, my kids are going to be open to this, and I can really engage them in these conversations. And that's going to help improve our relationship with one another. It's going to help improve our relationship with God. And we can strengthen families in this way and really have an impact on individual families, on congregations, and ultimately, of course, on the world.
P.S. If it's helpful to have like here's a starting spot or a something more plug and play for those. There's 2 resources in our camp store. The first one has to do with kind of that preparation and alignment piece. It's called Why Camp. We just talked to some leaders last week who found that one was the thing that they were using the most. So that Why Camp one is designed for you, camp leaders, to give to church leaders to help them kind of make the case and for them to kind of facilitate that alignment with those parents. So that's the Why Camp one. There's also a post-camp parent resource that just gives you a starting spot at least, or a plug and play kind of thing for that post-camp conversation starter. It's in some phases of kind of, get started and then dig deeper and then dig deeper. And then it's got some questions and places for you to just put in your summer theme or whatever might be there. So if you need something plug and play, I'd check those out, by the way. All right, Jake, we can spell. This is what we've learned today, that we can spell. So
we love acronyms on this podcast, don't we?
Everybody loves a good acronym.
We always have an acronym of some sort, it seems like.
We do. We want to get on the same page, so we want to prepare, align, gather, and equip. And really, like Jake said, these things came out of what we heard from parents and what we're learning in, especially these 4 projects that have a heart for connecting camp, church, and home as sacred spaces that can work together and form faith in ourselves, in our kids, in our families, in our community. So thanks, Jake, for laying that out. Let's hit our stat of the week quick.
Stat of the week. Stat of the week. Stat of the week.
All right, friends. So your call to action is to get on the same page with these really critical people, with these really, really critical people that are aligned with you, that are on the same mission you are. They want to be on the same page as you in forming faith in these kids especially, and then the impact that is exponential beyond that to those families, to those communities. But they're on the same team as you, and part of this ecosystem. And so when you get on the same page, if that helps you think about it, that P.A.G.E helps you think about it, that's great. And you can kind of check yourself on, hey, how we doing here? How we doing here? And maybe some of those ideas, maybe some of those quotes are things that you can have a small intervention into your communication plan, in your program plan, in your equipping plan, the things that they get before or during or after at all those stages. So get on the same page as them. We're grateful to be a partner with you as well. And thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. Thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch every new episode. If this is helpful for you and your organization and your team, follow the link in the show notes to become a supporter of the podcast. Our theme music was written and performed by Weekend Picnic. Find their original songs anywhere you get your music, or visit them at weekendpicnicband.com. Sacred Playgrounds is generating insights, equipping leaders, and connecting partners to help camping ministries thrive. Learn more about what we've got going on, view current research projects, and connect with our team at sacredplaygrounds.com.